Hello, my name is Ouranios, and I am the sole developer of my upcoming game Parts Adrift. This is the first progress video of Parts Adrift. Parts Adrift is a full 360 3D, third-person, collectathon game set in a fantasy world filled with sentient candles, chandeliers, glass people, and oils. You play as a lamp from an advanced distant planet who crash lands into this world and needs to find the missing ship parts to fix his ship. To me, when it comes to adventure games, it is important to create a world which the player would be invested in, a unique world to immerse in, which is why I chose to base the living creatures as sentient objects centered around the elements of light sources. In terms of the art style, I do feel the textures I created work well to fit into the whole cartoon-like theme. However, I feel as I may need to recreate some of the area such as the mountains, cliffs, and caves in Blender, since the textures themselves stretch along the raised Unity terrain, distorting it, and I felt that move on the plane was a bit rugged. Climbing on these mountains and walking along narrow paths was too rough. I was more concerned about the smoothness of the platform movement, as I had many incidences of my character falling through the wall or having issues climbing areas. So it is clear I feel as creating models for the environment instead of using raised platforms would smooth out the movement across the plains. I did struggle scoping down the whole concept for the visual scope. I had to discard a lot of my original narrative and world building a bit, and think more upon the main gameplay for my game. At the moment, I am kind of struggling to keep the player engaged. I felt that the game was very empty at this time. There is not much to do than just jumping and collecting the ship parts, and that the enjoyment would heavily rely on the exploration or interaction. Of course, the area isn't complete yet, but the main concept just seems unplayable. I haven't fully implemented the full gameplay of what I want yet, such as the quests, but from what I have seen it does seem a bit bland. I received feedback recently showing concern that the game as a whole would just not be that fun to be replayable, as it seemed to be a game people only complete once, and I was given some suggestions in possibly having some randomizer for the ship parts. Every time the player loads the game, the ship parts scatter to different locations in the area. Another suggestion I received this time from Epic Games was to focus more on the world building and narrative from my original story concept, which I wasn't exactly too sure on, as my original story was quite lengthy. I wasn't too sure how I could briefly fit it in this scope, and I wasn't too sure what kind of gameplay I would implement with it. Originally, I did state that one of the main unique selling points of this game is the unique world building and characters, which may come to a point where I might have to consider thinking about focusing on using on world building if the main gameplay isn't going where I hope it is going. For the next sprint, I will think about trying to focus on a more narrative-driven scope. I haven't been able to implement the interactions and quests just yet, so I'll play around with those and ask for some feedback and advice. I also want to try and recreate the environment in Blender, so the player can have a more level experience with the game, and I'll try and think about the main gameplay of this. After I implemented the basic interactions, would I want a randomizer or should there be something else that could boost the experience?